We're now in public session, and I'd like to invite the public into the gallery. Members, we're content to start the meeting in open session for the open session part of this meeting. Just a few housekeeping rules, members. Turn off all mobile phones and electronic devices, with the exception of your tablets, which contain your packs. Obviously, having them on silent is not sufficient because they do interfere with the assembly recording of the meeting. Members, apologies. I have apologies which is received from Mr Ross Hussey, who is unable to attend because he is attending a meeting of the Policing Board. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome two new members to the PAC today, Mr Roy Beggs and Mr Phil Flanagan. Both of you are very welcome. I believe, Mr Beggs, you've been here before.
Indeed.
So you're welcome back to our committee. And indeed to yourself, Mr Flanagan, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Michael. I was here this morning.
Members, I'd also like to thank our outgoing members, Mr Chris Hazard and Mr Michael Copeland, for their valuable contributions during their time on the committee, and I'm sure both will be missed. Okay, members, agenda item 2, minutes of the meeting of the 24th of September. Minutes are at the of the last meeting. They're at page 6 of your electronic packs. And for those not using the electronic packs, they are in your blue pack. Are you content for the minutes to be signed into the record?
Great.
Agreed. Members, agenda item 3, which is correspondence. There are no new items of correspondence for consideration today. And under agenda item 4, matters arising, the Deputy Chair and I met with the Ulster Bank on Monday to discuss our correspondence of the 11th of July to them regarding the BMC inquiry. Are members content that I report back on this meeting when we receive the outstanding correspondence in relation to the inquiry? We are awaiting some correspondence from the Department and SIB, which we should have for members' consideration at next week's meeting. So if he's courteous enough to allow that to happen, we'll report back on our meeting with the bank officials next week. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, members, moving on, I'd like to welcome Kieran Donnelly and his team here today. We've Kieran, Richard and Colette who are in attendance for our next piece of item, which is the Presbyterian Mutual Society. Members, at page 13 of your electronic packs is correspondence from Mr James McKeown regarding the collapse of the Presbyterian Mutual Society and into the subsequent reporting and accounting arrangements. Mr McKeown has written to this committee on 2 occasions and to other committees of the Assembly, namely the Derry Committee and the DFP Committee. And he's also asked a number of questions of the Derry, and the responses that have been received from the Derry Committee are here. Mr Beggs, you want to?
Yes, just wish to declare that my parents have been savers with the Presbyterian Mutual Society.
Okay, thank you, Mr Beggs. Mr Carr.
I suppose I better declare that this has been a former saver and family members of savers of Presbyterian Mutual as well.
Thank you, members.
I got all my money back as well.
Good on you.
That's the important thing.
Satisfied customer. Okay, members, the committee forwarded Mr McKeown's previous correspondence to the Eddy Committee on the 26th of June for its consideration. In the letter before you today, Mr McKeown refers to the auditing of the Derry's resource accounts with reference to the 50 million financial assistance and the 175 million loan provided to PMS after it went into administration by Derry. We've Mr Donnelly here today, and Colette, you're very welcome, and Richard. Kieran, do you have any comments you want to make in relation to the correspondence from Mr McKeown?
Probably just 2 general issues, Chair, before I pass over to Colette, who's our lead auditor on the Derry resource account. There's 2 separate issues here. I suppose there's the historical material on why PMS collapsed. We have no remit whatsoever with regard to that question. But as regards the second question, how the amounts government invested, given as how those been managed, yet we have an interest there, and we've been looking at how that investment is being protected. So I can pass over to Colette, she can give you more
Yeah.
detail
Okay, thank you,
on how all
Kieran.
that works.
Thank you. Okay, so briefly to remind members that the Presbyterian Mutual Society went into administration in November 2008. And in 2011, there was a scheme of arrangement sanctioned in the court with the approval of members. And what that consisted of was £1 million of financial assistance which came from the Presbyterian Church in Ireland, £50 million of financial assistance from DETI, and a loan of £175 million from DETI, and joint supervisors were appointed to manage the scheme of arrangement. The final administrator's report, which was dated in November of 2013, indicated that members and creditors had received between 77 pence and 100 pence in the pound as a result of that scheme of arrangement. So a reasonably good result, actually, from the scheme of arrangement. But our primary responsibilities are around the debt resource accounts and the accounting for the £50 million of financial assistance that came from DETI and the £175 million loan which DETI have currently in their accounts. At March 2014, the accounts we have just audited, those amounts are reflected in DETI's books, and the £175 million loan is still being recovered through from PMS, but the £50 million financial assistance has actually been written off as far as DETI are concerned, because they are on a long list of creditors, and they consider the £50 million as being unsecured effectively and not recoverable. Now that is slightly different than in the actual, if you look at the Presbyterian Mutual Society's own accounts, because they are still retaining that as an amount to be paid, and that is absolutely correct, that they should exhaust all avenues and pay that back if they can possibly do so. And during our audit, which we carried out in May-June time, we actually sought quite a bit of evidence in respect of the recoverability of the £170 million loan, as you would expect us to do. And we met and discussed with the department's insolvency advisors. The department, DETI actually have insolvency advisors procured to advise them, because they claim they obviously are not experts in that area. So we actually met with them and went into quite a bit of detail about the recoverability of the £175 million, which actually sits about £150 million. That's how much has been paid at this point. The initial plan was that the whole £175 million would be repaid by 2020, but actually, as it seems now, there was flexibility in sort of altering that time frame. That will probably slip by 3 to 4 years, so the likely repayment will be maybe 2023 or 2024. And I suppose there's a lot of things, variables within that. The property market is still on it's still sort of rising, I suppose, and there is a judgment to be taken as to the proper time to actually dispose of the assets of the Presbyterian Mutual Society. So DETI are keeping a very close eye on that. So just to say that we are very content with the arrangements that DETI has, the oversight arrangements they have on the £175 million and indeed the £50 million of financial assistance. They have the proper expertise in our view. They have insolvency and legal advisors advising them in respect of this, and they do actually challenge business plans, etc., that come before them. There's a couple of other issues I think Mr McKeown had also made reference to, which I'd like to just bring to your attention. One of those is in respect of the administration, the amount of the administrator's costs. And again, DETI have quite a detailed procedure to oversee that. They are able to challenge the extent of the administrator's costs right down to time and hours and cost of those hours as well, and they have done that. Mr McKeown has also made reference to the conduct of the auditors of the Presbyterian Mutual Society, and you'll see in the correspondence that DETI have confirmed that that is a matter which has been referred to the relevant accountancy body, and our experience would be that that does take some considerable time to work through. But I suppose the key point that we were concerned about was that there was some inference that the Derry resource accounts were inaccurate. We're completely convinced in terms of the audit we've carried out that the resource accounts are accurately stated, and that's just to give assurance to the committee of that.
Okay, thank you, Colette. Members, obviously we would share Mr McEwen's concerns and have total sympathy for him on that. But members, do any member want to make a comment on Colette's bill?
Can I ask a couple of questions about the property portfolio? What level of access does Derry have to see how individual properties are performing?
Well, they actually use the insolvency advisors to advise them in respect of that, because they do feel that they don't have the expertise on that, and the legal advisors as well. Every quarter they are provided with detailed schedules of, you know, the values of the properties and the rental income, which is the majority of the amount of income that's coming in is coming from rental income. So they are advised of that.
And are we any more hopeful now than at the time the financial support was given that repayments will be made?
Well, repayments on the £175 million loan are being made, and they're being made, you know, in terms of the scheme of arrangement that was agreed. So those are being made, and the £175 million is now down to £150 million.
Okay.
There is an interest on that as well. It's at 3.11%, you know, which is relatively competitive.
Okay.
So they are actually repaying those.
And that'll be 2023, 24, they'll be repaid
Yes, at this
by
point.
then.
It's very hard to say at this, but that's sort of their latest predictions. And that actually is on the basis of the worst case scenario, you know, that rental, basically whenever leases come to an end, that there'll be a break in the lease, and there's all sorts of different variables in there. So that is the worst case scenario.
Okay, Deputy Chairperson, are you finished, Phil?
Yeah, thanks, Michaela.
Deputy Chairperson.
Chairperson, you know, as somebody who was a member of a credit union for over 30 years, I'm very much aware that things can go wrong and do go wrong. But there's a huge responsibility in people who are handling other people's money. I'm entirely satisfied that the department's fine, and obviously if the audit office looked at it, that's, you know, we have no remit beyond that. That's good enough. But I think all of us are in the interest of the people who were lucky enough to get their money back and those who only got it back in part. I do think it would be at least interesting to find out, you know, what went so horribly wrong that millions of pounds was given on property which didn't materialise. And I'm sure people know somebody in every town and village, certainly in my small town, and several properties were bought for millions of pounds and sold again for less than 100,000. All courtesy of the Savers or the Presbyterian Mutual Society. And I think, you know, the public do have an interest in finding out what went wrong. So that aspect of it, I think, is still ongoing, you said, but it takes a long time to...
that aspect is, I suppose, is beyond our remit and probably beyond the remit of this committee. It is something the DETI committee had an interest in, and I suppose the big lesson from all of this was that the society didn't come under the ambit of the FSA, and it should have done. But it wasn't alone at this time.
No.
So it's part of a much bigger issue.
I think all churches probably have saving schemes of different types. They were set up with the best intentions in the world, and I think we separated the church from the Mutual Society a long time ago. But there were people employed there and who were obviously paid salaries and so on. And if only to learn for the future, such as lack of membership of the FSA and all that sort of thing. I mean, that should never have happened. Those loans should always have been insured and secured and all that sort of thing. But I'm happy enough, Chairperson.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. Trevor?
Yeah, following on maybe, I think there was lessons to be learned, but I take John's point, I'm involved in credit unions as well, but the outworkings of all this, of course,
meant the FSA or FCA actually have now got involved in credit unions as well, because it actually did indicate that they were vulnerable as well, and in some cases, actually, they did get into trouble.
Yep.
So whilst the big story in this case was the Presbyterian Mutual Society, credit unions have got in trouble as well. The FSA weren't regulating any of these organisations, so the FCA have come into credit unions as well in terms of that regulatory power that they have. But one of the points you made, Colette, in terms of paying back this money to the savers, and one of the bits I'm just a wee bit unclear about. So I'm glad to hear what you're saying is actually worst case scenario, that they're well on target for in terms of that. But what actually happens to the asset after that?
Well, I think...
So because of what I'm saying, I presume that the money in terms of paying back is on the basis of the incomes.
That's
But then we're left with assets. Where does that asset go?
Well, the 175 million will actually not be paid unless there's some realisation of assets
Right,
as
okay.
well. So effectively, the assets will have to be realised at some point.
So we're really waiting on the bounce in the market as well.
We're just waiting for the for the best price, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, members. Obviously, members, there was an investigation by the Financial Services Authority into this, and we're content. And I think, Colette, what you're saying to us today is that obviously we've listened and we have no concerns in relation to the dairy resource accounts. And it is beyond our remit, I think, in this committee to actually be able to do anything in relation to this. Members, are you content to note the correspondence and write to Mr McEwen about the aspects that are relevant to the remit of this committee, what we can or cannot do? And it is beyond the remit of this committee to be able to do anything, and we're satisfied that the dairy resource counts and auditing we've been given those assurances, and they're a true reflection of what's been done. Are we agreed on that?
And point them on if there are
Yeah.
issues for dairy. That's
Yeah.
where you take them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, members, thank you, Colette. Thank you. Okay, members, moving on, we have the committee motion for debate on the 24th of November. And it's at page 29, members, of your electronic packs. The motion proposes that the Assembly take note of the committee's reports and associated memoranda of reply, subject to the agreement of the Business Committee and the plenary business. It is anticipated that the debate would take place on Monday, the 24th of November. A total of 8 reports will be debated, and these are listed in the draft motion. Members, you'll be aware from previous Take Note debate, we focus on PAC reports, which have been subject to MORs since the last debate. I'd be grateful, members, as would the clerks, if you could take the opportunity to consider which reports you would like to speak on during the debate, and indicate maybe now, if you'd like to take a moment out and look at them, and indicate which ones you would like to speak on. This is to allow the committee time, committee team and clerks to help prepare contributions for that debate.
Pupil attendance followed by select.
What was that, Adrian?
Approving pupil attendance.
Pupil attendance.
PSNI, use of agency staff.
Okay.
Can you send me stuff on that? 'Cause
Yeah, this is why we're doing it now today, because this will allow the clerks time to prepare, your contribution on that.
Thank you.
Major capital projects, DCAP,
Cal, for Sean.
page 30. Public sector,
Yeah.
financial shared service centre.
Okay, right.
And I'll be touching on one or two others as well. I take it everybody does that as well. You
Yeah.
concentrate in a certain area.
Yeah. Any other takers?
PSNI.
Yes, and I can do, yeah.
No. What's
What if we left? Yeah. Account NI? No, that's Roy.
Fire
NI.
service.
Fire service.
Oh, excellent.
I missed that one.
How did you miss that one, John? We have DFP, Collaborative Procurement and Aggregated Demand.
We've also got the
Agri-Food and Biosciences Institute.
suspected fraud and the whistleblower DRD.
Whistleblower DRD. You remember the joint one we done, the DRD whistleblower? And
Road signs.
road signs. Obviously, members of the, there's enough left if members want to pair up and split a report.
Split mine if you want. Probably do. Yes,
I'm going to be working with Alex.
He's done with me.
Right, okay. Do you want another one?
No.
AFB or?
Definitely not. We wouldn't want to criticise your minister. Wouldn't be like us.
Wouldn't be like, Trevor would not. Sorry. Yeah, I don't mind that one. We'll take AFB. Also, Sean, pupil attendance is Adrian, was it?
Adrian.
If you want to join,
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah.
Siobhan. What's left?
The
DRD,
DRD and
NI Water.
NI Water. Acres.
5, 4, 3.
Isn't here.
Ross isn't here, yeah. Maybe he might like one.
We'll leave that one.
Yeah, well, we'll leave one for Ross. Okay.
Paul, do you get Paul?
Put in.
No,
Paul as
Paul.
well.
Choose one for him.
Choose one for him, just tell him what to do.
How did we forget about Paul?
Oh, the
Bioscience would be a good one for Paul.
Yeah, well, that's fine if you want
Yeah,
to put him
tell him
down.
if that, he'd talk about it.
No, you nominated him?
AFB.
Yeah, I'll be all right.
It'll be fine.
Can cover anything.
Why did you?
That was the one you didn't want. He turned up there.
We could give Paul DRD the signs one and the NI Waters response.
Ah, that's okay, that'll
We'll
do.
give him that one.
He'd be happy with it. He'd be happy.
DRD
Tell me.
and water.
Yeah.
And then Ross is doing, or Just who does.
Is that one gone?
Yeah.
Gone.
So what was it given Ross? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Lieutenant, financial services.
When is it?
Gone.
24th of November. I'd collapse. Not be here.
That's because it's 2 reports.
Yeah, I think, no, did I?
Yes.
I did, I picked place.
December.
We could suggest maybe that Paul and Ross do the double one, the NI Water and the DRD one, because that's 2 reports.
Agreed.
In their absence, we can suggest it. I mean,
Yeah,
whether
that's
they-
fine. We agree.
Members, the committee, we envisage a 2-hour debate with 15 minutes for myself and 15 minutes to wine, so it would be the usual 5 minutes per member.
Yeah, plenty.
Okay, members, are you content with what you have chosen? Yeah.
No.
Okay, members, moving on. Agenda item 5, inquiry into the Audit Office report on the Courts and Tribunal Service Trust Statement. We're looking into this. Start it and open, okay. Okay, right. Okay, members, at page 3 of your yellow confidential packs, you'll find the Audit Office report. And just for members' information, I would remind you that this report is embargoed until the 17th of October, when it will be laid in the Assembly with the departmental resource accounts. And at page 14 of your yellow confidential packs, you will find the briefing from the Audit Office. Members, does any member wish to declare an interest in this inquiry into the Courts and Tribunal Service?
Just so we're not
Yeah.
in assembly, a lot of people may have to turn up the courts, you know.
No.
It depends if the speeding fines are paid or not.
TV
Yeah,
license is a
we're
big one.
custodial ones, but
Members, we have with us today the Audit Office officials that have worked on the Audit Office report on these topics, and they're here today. Barry and Suzanne, you're very welcome to brief us on the key findings of the report. So, Kieran, maybe do you want to begin, or?
I'll just pass straight to Suzanne.
Okay, Suzanne, thank you.
What do you think?
Thank you. As you'll note, this is a report to the Northern Ireland Courts and Tribunal Service Trust Statement 2012-13 accounts, so it's not one of our traditional value for money reports. It's a report to the accounts, and it's due to be laid in the Assembly next week. Just to give you some background, financial penalties can be imposed by the courts, PSNI and the Driver and Vehicle Agency for a wide range of reasons. While most are paid promptly, dealing with those who default is an ongoing but important challenge for the justice system. Since 2011-12, the Courts and Tribunal Service has produced a trust statement which shows income from fines and penalties, administration costs and estimates for uncollectible amounts. In the most recent audited set of accounts, the 12-13 accounts, the total debt recorded as of the 31st of March 2013 was for £19 million. This debt is accumulated over a number of years, and 2.5 million of the total 19 has been outstanding for more than 5 years. Courts and Tribunal Service estimate that over a third of the total debt, so £6.5 million of the total balance, will not be recovered. Included within the 19 million balance is a balance of 8.2 million, which relates specifically to outstanding warrants, and its courts are estimating that 5.1 million of this will not be recovered. Now, there are three main elements making up that unrecoverable amount. First of all, 1.1 million of the debt is not expected to be recovered as a result of missing paper warrants, so warrants that just cannot be accounted for. 1.5 million is not expected to be recovered based on past experience, and 2.5 million of the warrants is not expected to be recovered because it's expected that some of that will be written off by the court, and also a portion of it will be served as a prison sentence rather than a payment of the fine in cash. In explaining the issues associated with fine enforcement, I think it's important to explain to the members just the process for actually enforcing the fine, and that's what I'd just like briefly to outline to you now. Up until March 2013, when a debt couldn't be collected by the Courts and Tribunal Service, a warrant of commitment was issued by the court for PSNI enforcement. Police then had responsibility for going out into the community and serving the warrant. The defaulter could make payment in cash, or alternatively could serve a prison sentence, and they could elect to serve that prison sentence. Subsequently, however, the judicial review, there were 5 applications for judicial review, challenging the arrangement for imposing enforcing fines. As a result of the judicial reviews, 2 important judgments were made in March 2013, which quite substantially changed the system. And it determined that warrants could only be issued once default had occurred and the defendant had been given an opportunity to come back to court. This changed the process considerably, and the previous warrants that had been issued were automatically suspended and recalled. As a result, 36,000 outstanding warrants were recalled with a value of £8.2 million. These warrants are now subject to a judicial sift to determine whether they should be written off or subject to a default hearing. So in other words, the defendant would be summoned to attend court. There are a number of key areas the committee may wish to consider further, but we'll maybe go in, you may wish to talk about that in closed session.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Members, we'll move into closed session now for a discussion around the report. Kieran, is there anything you want to add to that, Kieran, before we move in?
Yes, Chair, just maybe some key messages from this report. I think the big message from the report is, I suppose in a nutshell, there's been a serious breakdown in control around the enforcement of fines through the issue of warrants. So, effectively, we've had thousands of warrants issued by the courts, but these haven't been properly tracked and followed up by both the court service and the police. Now, the issue was only really flushed out when the court service was required to produce a separate set of accounts for fines, and that was from 2011-2012. I suppose in the period before 2011-12, we had been pushing them to produce this separate account. So a lot of this was under the radar until really last year. Now, we have two sets of accounts, 11-12 and 12-13. I have qualified my opinion on both sets of accounts, really on two things. Uncertainty, really, whether the debt figure in the accounts is, whether that amount is fully recoverable. And Suzanne said that it's already been written down by 6.5 million, but there is still a question mark even around the written down value, whether that's recoverable. There's a question mark on the figure in the accounts. There's also a huge vulnerability of the system to fraud, and there actually is a really big suspected fraud here that Barry will say a little more about. Also, the report on the accounts is actually quite short. It's only 8 pages, but there are questions really jumping out of every paragraph. But we have also included in your pack, it's a report from the Criminal Justice people. They had an inspection report in 2010, which made a number of recommendations. Some interesting points in that, for example, were that 30% of prison admissions were for fine defaults. So that report, in conjunction with ours, will provide members with a wider context to look at this issue. Pass over to Barry to get into some of the.
To go into close.
Or do you want some of the accounts material?
Yeah. No, just to let members know, we have to, when we're asking questions to the audit office, we have to go into close for the questions. Is that okay? Barry, did you want to just?
No. Chair, I assume we were in close. Sorry.
No, we're going to close now.
Is the Northern Ireland Assembly